What happens when a hard-working single mom helps a millionaire in need? You won't believe the shocking twist that comes next. In this story, a simple act of kindness turns into something far more extraordinary when a millionaire discovers something on her finger that changes everything. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, emotions, and life-changing moments you'll never see coming. But before we start, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories that will keep you hooked till the very end. It was an ordinary Saturday morning when Sarah, a hard-working single mom of two, found herself on her usual route to the grocery store. The morning was crisp and clear, the sun barely peeking over the horizon as she navigated the familiar streets of her modest neighborhood. Her car, a reliable but aged sedan, hummed steadily beneath her as she made her way. The car had seen better days, much like herself, but it got her where she needed to go for now. She had always been able to manage, juggling her job as a waitress at the local diner, taking care of her two energetic kids, and trying to keep the house in some semblance of order. Every penny counted, and every day felt like a balancing act. But that morning, the balance was disrupted. The engine of her car sputtered unexpectedly, causing Sarah's heart to sink. She could feel the car slowing down, its usual smooth hum turning into a rough rattle. Sarah tried to push the accelerator but nothing happened. She glanced at the dashboard, no warning lights, just the sound of her car's engine slowly dying. "Come on, not today," she muttered under her breath, gripping the steering wheel tighter as the car coasted to the side of the road. She checked her watch. She was running late for her shift at the diner, where tips were the difference between paying for groceries or not. Every minute mattered. She turned the key again, hoping for a miracle. The engine sputtered but refused to start. Frustration built up inside her. She was stuck in a part of town that was unfamiliar to her, an upscale neighborhood with sprawling lawns, neatly trimmed hedges, and expensive cars parked in driveways. It felt like she was in a world she didn't belong to. Sarah sighed deeply, feeling a wave of helplessness. She opened the door, stepped out onto the sidewalk, and popped the hood, hoping she might spot something obvious. But she knew nothing about cars. Her skills were limited to cooking, cleaning, and keeping the kids fed and happy. Her car had always been her reliable partner, until now. As she stared at the engine, wondering what to do next, the sound of a sleek sports car revving up caught her attention. She turned to see a black Lamborghini coming to a stop just beside her. The car gleamed in the morning sunlight, its polished surface almost blinding. Sarah froze for a moment, unsure if the car was stopping for her or just passing by. Then the window rolled down, and a voice called out, "Need a hand?" Sarah blinked. The man behind the wheel was in his mid-30s, with a confident air that made him seem almost out of place in this quiet neighborhood. His sharp suit, the kind you'd see in a business magazine, fit him perfectly, and his expensive sunglasses hid his eye. He looked like someone who belonged to a different world, a world that Sarah had never really been a part of. She hesitated. Normally she wouldn't even think about accepting help from a stranger, especially someone dressed like that. She glanced at her car, then back at the man. Her mind raced with thoughts of possible scams or dangers, but then she realized he wasn't leaving. His car was right there, shiny and perfect, and she was standing next to a broken-down heap of metal. She had no other choice. "I think the engine's gone kaput," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I don't know much about cars." The man smiled, his teeth white against his dark features. He looked more amused than concerned, which made Sarah feel a little self-conscious. "Lucky for you, I do," he said, his tone light and friendly. Without waiting for her to reply, he stepped out of the car and walked toward her. Sarah couldn't help but notice how confident he was in every step he took. His shoes were polished to perfection, expensive, probably designer, something she could only dream of affording. She glanced at her own worn sneakers and the fraying edges of her jeans. They looked like they belonged in two entirely different worlds. Despite his seemingly perfect exterior, the man seemed kind. His smile was genuine, and he didn't seem to be judging her or her car. It was as if he had encountered a broken-down vehicle like hers hundreds of times, and simply saw it as another problem to solve. He crouched down in front of the engine, pulling out a small toolkit from the bag in his hand. "All right, let's take a look. We might be able to get this running again." Sarah stood by, unsure of what to do, but feeling a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this strange encounter would turn out okay. As he worked, Sarah tried to keep the conversation light. "You always help people with car troubles?" she asked, genuinely curious. He looked up at her and shrugged, his hands still busy under the hood. I guess, I've got a thing for cars, but I also try to help people out whenever I can. You'd be surprised how often I get asked for help. Sarah laughed softly, looking at his immaculate appearance. You must get asked a lot, especially with a car like that. The man looked up at her, eyes glinting with amusement. I suppose it comes with the territory. People tend to notice a car like this. She nodded, but her thoughts were racing. There was something about him, something beyond his wealth and polished exterior, that made him seem different. He didn't act like the rich people Sarah was used to seeing in the neighborhood. He seemed normal, grounded even. It was a small comfort, one she didn't expect to find on this hectic morning. As they continued working on the engine together, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from ordinary. As Sarah and Alex continued to inspect the engine, Sarah couldn't help but feel an increasing sense of curiosity. The man who had come to her rescue was no ordinary stranger. He was someone who seemed to have it all. Yet there was something about him that didn't quite fit her initial expectations. For a millionaire with a business empire, Alex seemed remarkably down to earth. So what exactly do you do? Sarah asked, breaking the silence as they worked together on her car. She handed him a rag to wipe the grease off his hands. His clothes, which had looked so expensive when he first stepped out of the car, were now a bit dirtier, but he didn't seem bothered in the least. Alex straightened up and wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. I run a tech company, he said casually, as if it was just another job. Built it from the ground up, software, cloud storage, cybersecurity, you name it. I've been doing it for about 10 years now. Sarah couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. A tech company, that's impressive. I mean, I don't know much about business or tech, but that sounds huge. He smiled, but there was no smugness in it, no sense of superiority. Instead, his smile was soft, almost self-deprecating. It is, I guess, but honestly, it wasn't always like this. I started with nothing. My first office was in a dingy little apartment. I slept on a couch and ate canned food for a year, just trying to get the company off the ground. There were a lot of nights where I didn't know if it would work out. Sarah nodded, her mind raced. She knew what it was like to hustle every day, to scrape by and fight just to stay afloat. But hearing Alex's story, it was clear that he hadn't just arrived at his success easily. It made her feel a little better about her own struggles. Maybe the grind was worth it after all. Wow, she said, genuinely impressed. I can't even imagine doing that, but it sounds like you made it work. Alex shrugged. It's all about perseverance. You keep going, even when it feels like the world is against you. Eventually, the pieces fall into place. They paused for a moment, and Sarah felt the weight of her own challenges. She had spent years juggling multiple jobs, never having time for herself, and only focusing on her kids and making ends meet. The idea of starting something from scratch seemed impossible, but Alex made it sound so simple, so attainable. Sounds like you really know how to make things happen, she said, tightening a bolt on the engine. I've got kids to take care of, and I barely have time for anything else. It's hard to imagine having time or energy for anything big like that. Alex looked over at her, his expression softening. I get it, he said, handing her a wrench. It's tough. I think a lot of people don't understand how much it takes to balance everything. You make sacrifices, but at the end of the day, it's family that matters the most. That's the part of my life I don't take for granted. I may have a lot of money, but the people I care about are what truly keep me going. His words hung in the air, and for the first time, Sarah felt like she was speaking to someone who truly understood her. For a brief moment, she forgot about the car and the heavy weight of her own responsibilities. She realized that, despite his wealth and success, Alex was someone who shared her values, someone who didn't just see the world in terms of status and money. Do you always help people with car troubles? Sarah asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Alex grinned, the playful glint in his eyes returning. I guess so. I've got a soft spot for people who put others first. I think it's important to use success to help others. There's so much you can do with money, but there's even more you can do with kindness. Sarah chuckled, a hint of amusement in her voice. Well, I could certainly use some help with my budget. My car's barely hanging on, and everything else feels like it's falling apart too. Alex raised an eyebrow, his gaze flicking over her worn-out car. He seemed to study it for a moment, before looking back at Sarah with a thoughtful expression. I think I can get it running, he said. It's not the engine that's the problem, it's mostly just some neglected maintenance. You'd be surprised how much you could fix on your own if you had the right tools and knowledge. Sarah couldn't hide her skepticism. You think I could fix it? I know you could, Alex replied with a wink. It just takes a little know-how and confidence. You might be surprised at how much you already know. Sometimes, all it takes is a little push. She raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to laugh or take him seriously. You think I could become a mechanic? He shrugged. Not a mechanic, but you'd be surprised at how much you can learn if you have the right mindset. A lot of people think you need to be an expert to do things like this, but sometimes, you just need to try. You never know what you're capable of until you do. His words were encouraging, even if they seemed a little too optimistic. But there was something about his tone, something genuine in the way he spoke, that made her wonder. Maybe she could do more than just survive. Maybe she could learn a thing or two, make her life a little easier. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to this chance encounter than a broken-down car. Maybe you're right, Sarah said with a smile, feeling a tiny spark of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. I'll think about it. Alex smiled back, his expression warm and reassuring. Good. That's the first step. After several more attempts, Alex finally managed to get Sarah's old sedan engine running again. The sound of the engine starting brought an immense sense of relief to Sarah. She had feared that she might be stuck here, stranded in an unfamiliar neighborhood, late for work and with no clear way out. But Alex, with his steady hands and knowledge of engines, had pulled off what seemed like a small miracle. Thanks so much, Sarah said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. I can't believe you actually fixed it. Alex gave her a slight smile, wiping his hands on a rag. No problem, you'd be surprised what a little elbow grease can do. As they worked together to close the hood of the car, Sarah couldn't help but feel a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't just about getting her car started, it was the kindness Alex had shown her. He didn't act like a typical millionaire, someone who would have looked down on a woman like her. Instead, he treated her with respect and humility. But as Alex stepped back from the engine and closed the hood, his eyes suddenly froze on something that seemed to catch his attention. It was subtle, but Sarah noticed the shift in his expression. His usual confident smile faltered for a brief moment, and his gaze dropped to her hand. Alex's eyes lingered on her finger, and Sarah instinctively followed his gaze. The gold ring on her finger, simple yet timeless, caught the light. For a second she wondered if she had forgotten to take it off before leaving the house. It had been so long since she thought about it, her husband's wedding band, the symbol of the life they had once shared. Alex's voice broke the silence, and there was a hint of something unfamiliar in. Wait, you're married? Sarah blinked, caught off guard by the question. She glanced down at the ring again, memories rushing in like a wave. It had been years since she lost her husband, but she never had the heart to take it off. Oh no, I'm not married, she said, her voice softer now. She could feel the weight of the memories pressing in as she explained. I was, but my husband passed away a few years ago. I'm raising my kids on my own now. Alex's face softened immediately, the sharpness in his expression melting away into something gentler. His usual self-assured demeanor gave way to a quiet sadness, a vulnerability Sarah hadn't expected. He stood there for a moment, his gaze distant, as though processing what she had just said. I'm really sorry to hear that, Alex said quietly, his tone sincere. There was no pretension in his voice, no attempt to hide behind the polished exterior. He seemed genuinely moved by her words. Sarah, feeling a slight shift in the air, glanced at him more closely. She had always assumed that someone like Alex, with his wealth and success, had it all together. From the moment they had met, he had exuded confidence, almost a kind of perfect life, a life she could only dream of. But in this moment, she saw something different. The sadness in his eyes was palpable. It was as if for just a moment, the glossy surface of his life had cracked, revealing something deeper, something more human. She didn't know why, but she felt compelled to offer some comfort. It's been tough, she said, her voice softening. But I have my kids, and we're getting by. Some days are harder than others, but we're making it through. There was a long pause as both of them stood there, processing the exchange. The usual rush of the world around them felt distant now, muffled, as if the universe had paused to give them this moment of raw, unspoken understanding. I didn't mean to bring up any painful memories, Alex said, quickly shifting the subject, clearly uncomfortable with the silence that had settled between them. He took a step back, as if trying to put some physical distance between the heaviness of the conversation and the more practical world of car repairs. But hey, your car is good as new, just make sure to get it checked out by a professional soon, alright? You don't want it giving you trouble down the road. Sarah nodded, her smile returning, though it was tinged with something deeper now. Thanks, Alex, I really appreciate it. Her voice was sincere, but it wasn't just the car repair she was thankful for. It was more than, she was grateful for the way he had seen her, not just as the woman with the broken car, but as someone with a story, someone who had been through pain and loss. She was grateful that, in a world that often felt like it only saw her as a single mom, Alex had looked beyond the surface and taken the time to listen. For a brief moment, their worlds seemed to align in a way that neither of them had expected. Sarah had always thought of herself as a small part of the world, just another person struggling to survive, just another mom trying to do her best. But today, in this unexpected encounter, she had felt, and for Alex, maybe it was a reminder that even those with everything have their own battles to fight. Take care of yourself, Sarah, Alex said as he gave her a final look, his expression now relaxed, but with a hint of something deeper in his eye. It was a mix of empathy and a silent understanding that Sarah couldn't fully comprehend. You too, Alex, she said, her voice soft. As she slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, she couldn't shake the feeling that this brief encounter was more than just a random event. Something had shifted today, something small but significant. Something that made her wonder if fate had a hand in bringing Alex into her life. The warm afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow over the scene as Sarah slid into the driver's seat, preparing to head off. The engine of her car hummed smoothly, a small victory in the midst of her busy life. She was just about to pull away when Alex's voice stopped her in her tracks. Actually, I've got an idea, Alex called out, his footsteps echoing on the pavement as he walked back toward. She turned, half expecting him to ask one last favor or offer some quick advice on maintaining the car. But what he said next caught her completely off guard. How about we meet up for coffee sometime? He suggested, his tone casual but with an undercurrent of something else, something that made Sarah pause. You could use a break, and I think I could help you out with your car, and maybe something else. Sarah blinked, unsure of how to react. She had expected the usual polite exchange of thanks and goodbyes, not an invitation. But it wasn't just the offer of coffee that threw her off. There was a quiet sincerity in his voice, a certain weight to his words. It felt like he was offering more than just kindness. It was as though he wanted to make sure she didn't walk away from this encounter without something more than a functioning car. She hesitated, her mind racing with thoughts. Help me out with what exactly? Sarah asked, trying to mask the curiosity bubbling beneath her caution. She was genuinely intrigued, but also wary. She didn't want to read too much into it. Was this just a friendly offer, or was there something deeper behind it? Alex smiled, as though he had been expecting the question. Well, I've got connections in the automotive world, he said, his eyes lighting up a little. Maybe I could help you find a better car at a price you can afford. One that won't leave you stranded on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. He paused, giving her a knowing look. And maybe I could offer some advice on how to make your life a little easier. Sarah felt a flicker of hope at his words, but it was quickly replaced by skepticism. She wasn't used to people offering help without expecting something in return. And while she could use a better car, the idea of taking handouts, especially from someone like Alex, didn't sit well with her. I'm not sure, she said, her voice trailing off, as she considered his offer. I don't want to owe you anything. I'm not the kind of person who takes favors like that. I've been doing things on my own for so long. Alex raised his hand in a calming gesture, his smile never fading. It's not about owing me anything, Sarah, he said, his voice low and reassuring. It's about helping each other out. Look, I've been in tough spots before. And I know it's hard to ask for help, but sometimes you just have to take it. People can't do everything alone, no matter how strong they are. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she took in his word. There was something genuine in the way he spoke, something different from the typical rich guy rhetoric she was used to. Alex wasn't asking for anything in return. He wasn't offering a handout, he was offering an opportunity. His words felt like a lifeline, even if it was one she wasn't sure she was ready to grab hold of just yet. I get it, she said after a pause, her voice quieter now. She stared down at her hands, gripping the steering wheel, suddenly aware of how tired she truly was. But it's hard, you know. I've been so independent, I'm not used to letting people help. Alex nodded, his expression softening. I understand, and I'm not asking you to suddenly start relying on me for everything. I'm just saying, sometimes a little help can make all the difference, and you've got to start somewhere. His words hung in the air between them, charged with an unspoken understanding. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of relief, as if someone had finally acknowledged the weight she had been carrying alone for so long. It was a strange feeling, but one that felt right.
She wasn't sure where this was leading, but something about Alex's offer made her feel that it wasn't just about a car or a coffee. "All right," she said, her voice a little more certain now. "I'll meet you for coffee, but just so you know, I'm not taking handouts. I'll figure out what I can do on my own, okay?" Alex's eyes twinkled with amusement, and he nodded. "Deal, but you never know, a little advice can go a long way." They shared a brief smile, and for a moment, the world felt a little light. It wasn't just about fixing her car, or getting help with her budget. It was the simple act of two people reaching across their own worlds, offering each other a chance to connect. "Thanks, Alex," she said quietly, feeling an unexpected wave of gratitude. "I really appreciate it." "Anytime," he replied with a grin. "I'll send you the details. Let's meet up soon." As Sarah started her car and pulled away, her mind was racing. She wasn't sure what had just happened. She had just accepted an offer from a complete stranger, after all. But something told her that this unexpected meeting was only the beginning of something that would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. She'd spent the time wondering whether the offer he made was genuine, or if she had just misread the whole situation. The hesitation was natural. She had been burned before by people who seemed too good to be true. But there was something about Alex that felt different. Maybe he was just a nice guy trying to do something good for someone who needed it. Or perhaps deep down, she was hoping for something more, not just for herself, but for her children too. The little cafe was warm, cozy, with the rich smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. It wasn't crowded, and there was a peaceful quietness about the place that allowed for real conversations to happen. Sarah sat across from Alex, stirring her coffee, her thoughts still racing. "So, how's the car?" Alex asked casually, his eyes locking with hers. His tone was friendly but attentive, like he genuinely cared about the answer. "It's running better than ever," Sarah replied with a small smile, taking a sip of her coffee. "I took your advice, and had it looked at. It's still not the best, but I'm making it work." She hesitated before adding, "I'm just trying to get by, you know?" Alex nodded, giving her a thoughtful look. "Good, I'm glad to hear that, but I've been curious, Sarah. You mentioned you were married once. Does that ring still mean something to you?" Sarah froze for a moment, the question catching her off guard. She instinctively looked down at her hand, where the simple gold band still sat. She hadn't thought much about it in recent months, but in that moment, it felt heavy. The ring was a constant reminder of a life that was no longer hers, a life that had been filled with love, loss and memories. She gently touched the ring, feeling the cool metal beneath her fingertips, before meeting Alex's gaze. "It does," she said quietly, her voice betraying a hint of emotion. "It's a reminder of the good times, and the tough ones. But I don't think about it every day anymore. I've had to move on, for the kids." Alex's eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. "You know, I don't think the right person would ever expect you to forget your past," he said gently, "but I also think you deserve a future filled with more happiness." His voice was calm, sincere. The words seemed to carry a weight that made Sarah's chest tighten with something she couldn't quite define. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah let his words sink in, a quiet mix of sadness and hope swirling inside her. She had always felt like a part of her had been left behind when her husband passed away. The future she had once imagined was no longer in the cards, and though she had done her best to move forward, part of her still longed for something more, something better. Before she could gather her thoughts, Alex shifted in his seat. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, pulling out a small velvet box. He opened it slowly, revealing a silver keychain inside. It wasn't just any keychain, it had a small delicate car charm hanging from it, gleaming softly in the cafe's ambient light. "I know you said you can't afford a new car right now," Alex said, his voice low, "but I've been thinking, maybe I can help you get one. A reliable one for you and your kids." He placed the keychain on the table in front of her, his eyes locked with hers, waiting for her to respond. Sarah was speechless, her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the keychain, the car charm swinging gently. This wasn't just a casual gesture, it was a life-changing offer. The weight of the moment hit her like a wave. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what was happening. "Are you serious?" she finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. She felt a tear well up in her eye, but quickly brushed it away, not wanting to break down in front of him. "I am," Alex said, with a gentle smile, his eyes full of understanding. "No strings attached, just someone who believes in second chances. You've been through enough, Sarah. You deserve a fresh start, and I want to help make that happen." Sarah's heart felt like it was racing in her chest, her emotions swirling in a whirlwind. A tear escaped, slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but the moment still lingered in the air between them. This wasn't just a random act of kindness. This was someone who had taken the time to listen, to understand her struggles, and now was offering her a lifeline. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like things were finally starting to turn around. The keychain was a symbol of more than just a car. It was a symbol of hope, of possibilities she hadn't dared to dream of in a long time. She hadn't realized how much she needed this kind of help, until it was being offered so selflessly. "I don't know what to say," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined anything like this." "You don't have to say anything," Alex replied softly. "Just know that you're not alone in this. Everyone deserves a little help sometimes, and today, I'm here for you." Sarah sat there stunned. She had spent so long carrying the weight of everything on her own, raising her kids, managing her life, doing everything she could to make ends meet. But here across the table from her, was a man who genuinely cared, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe again. A fresh start, a new car, and most importantly, a reminder that sometimes, help could come from the most unexpected places. Alex had changed everything for her. "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you so much." Alex simply smiled. "No need to thank me, just take care of yourself and your kids. That's all that matters." The cafe was quiet now, the soft hum of the air conditioning, mingling with the clinking of cups and saucers in the background. Sarah sat back in her chair, the keychain still warm in her hand. She wasn't sure how long she'd been sitting there, but time felt like it had stretched into something unrecognizable. The weight of Alex's offer was sinking in, but so was something else, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in a long time: gratitude.
For years Sarah had been surviving on scraps, juggling her job at the diner, her responsibilities as a single mother, and the never-ending stress of keeping her family afloat. She had been strong, resolute, and determined to make it on her own. But that resolve had also come with a cost, the cost of pride, of not letting anyone see how much she was struggling, of doing everything herself without asking for help. And now, here she was, staring at a small silver keychain that symbolized so much more than just a new car. It symbolized a future, a chance to breathe, a chance for her kids to grow up with a little less worry, a little more stability. It was a lifeline, one that she hadn't even known she needed until Alex had extended it to her. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the keychain, and she felt tears begin to sting the corners of her eyes. She quickly blinked them away, but they were persistent, slipping down her cheeks despite her efforts to hold them back. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely a murmur as she looked up at him. "I don't know how to thank you." Alex's expression softened, and his warm smile never wavered. He leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. "You don't have to," he replied, his voice calm and steady. "We all need a little help sometimes. You're a strong woman, Sarah, and I know you've been through a lot. I'm just glad I could be there for you, even if it's in this small way." Small way. The offer of a car, a fresh start for her family, was no small gesture. It was monumental, but there was more than just the material offer. It was the way he had cared, the way he saw her not as a struggling single mom, but as someone worthy of a future, of opportunity, of kindness. That was what was breaking her down now, the overwhelming realization that she hadn't been invisible. For once, someone had truly seen her. Tears flowed freely now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of hope that had been buried under years of stress, grief, and survival, but was now bubbling to the surface, like a wellspring she had long since forgotten. She looked down at her hands, feeling the keychain still clutched tightly between her fingers. Her voice caught in her throat, but she managed to speak again, her words barely above a whisper. "I've been so caught up in surviving, Alex. I've forgotten what it feels like to be supported, to have someone believe in me." Alex didn't speak immediately. He just watched her, his expression soft and understanding. Then, after a moment, he gently reached across the table and placed the keychain back in her hand. His fingers brushed against hers, sending a jolt of warmth through her. It was a simple touch, but it felt like everything she had been longing for. "Take your time," Alex said softly, his voice reassuring. "Think it over. I'm just here when you're ready." For the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel alone in her struggle. The weight on her shoulders, the constant burden of being the one who had to make everything work, seemed just a little bit lighter. She hadn't been expecting anything to change today. She had walked into the cafe with the same doubts and worries she had carried for years, and yet here she was, on the verge of something she never imagined for herself, and certainly not from someone like Alex. As she looked at him, she realized that kindness wasn't always grand gestures or big promises. Sometimes it was as simple as listening. Sometimes it was about seeing someone for who they truly were, and offering them a hand, not out of obligation, but because they deserved it. She wasn't just being handed a car, she was being given a second chance, a chance to finally give her children a better life, a chance for herself, too, to rediscover what it felt like to hope again, to trust again, to be cared for. She took a deep breath and finally spoke again, her voice steady, despite the emotions swirling inside her. "I'll think about it, Alex. I need to process everything, but I can't tell you how much this means to me." Alex simply nodded, his smile warm and understanding. "Take all the time you need, Sarah. Just know I'm here." As Sarah walked out of the cafe a short while later, the weight of her day felt just a little bit lighter. The clouds in her mind had started to part, revealing rays of hope she hadn't realized were there. She had walked into that cafe, feeling alone, like she was fighting a battle she could never win. But now, she walked out with something more precious than a new car. She had a glimpse of a future where things might not always be easy, but where hope and kindness had a place. She thought about her children and how they would react when she told them about the offer. She thought about her late husband, how much he had wanted her to have a good life, a happy life. But more than anything, she thought about herself. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing, toward a future where she didn't have to carry the weight alone. As she drove home that afternoon, the keychain in her pocket, she couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the belief that sometimes, help really does come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness to change someone's life forever. As Sarah pulled into her driveway, she couldn't help but think that today was more than just a moment in time. It was the beginning of something new. A new chapter, one where kindness, second chances, and hope would play a bigger role in her life. She wasn't sure exactly where this new path would lead, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to find out. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, remember, the world is full of surprises, and sometimes, all we need is one small act of kindness to turn things around.